start with HTML, or Hypertext Markup Language, which is a language that we can use to describe the structure of the web page, all of the buttons and the text and the forms and other parts of the web page that the user ultimately sees and interacts with. Our very first HTML page is going to look a little something like this. It's going to be text-based code that we write that a web browser, like Safari or Chrome or Firefox, is then able to look at, parse, understand, and display to the user. So let's take a look at this page one line at a time and get an understanding for how it works. Even if you don't quite understand all the nuances of the syntax, there are probably a couple of things that stand out to you. You might notice the word title, which probably reflects the title of the web page, for example, which in this case appears to be the word hello. And then down further below, we see that we have the body of the web page that seems to contain the words hello world. So what is this web page actually going to look like? Well, let's take a look at it. We'll go ahead and open up a text editor. You can use any text editor you want, but for this course, I'm going to use Microsoft's Visual Studio Code. And I'm going to open up a new file that I'm just going to call hello.html. Inside of hello.html, I'm going to write the same HTML that we just saw a moment ago. And we'll explain each of these lines in due time. But recall that we had a title of the page that said something like hello, and then a body of the page where we said something like hello world, for example. So this is our very first HTML page. And if I go ahead and open that HTML page, as by opening hello.html, for example, inside of a web browser, what I'll see is something like this. In the body of the page, I see the words hello world. And if you notice up here at the top of my web browser, I see the title bar, where I have the title for this page, which in this case is just the word hello. So this is our very first web program that we've been able to develop just using HTML. And now let's explore in more detail how exactly this program works. So here again was the web page that we were just looking at. And this very first line here, doctype HTML, is what we might call a doctype declaration. It's a way of telling the web browser what version of HTML we're using in this particular web page. Because depending on the version of HTML, the web browser might want to display different information, or it might need to parse the page a little bit differently. Each version of HTML has had a slightly different way of indicating that version. But this line here, doctype HTML, is our way of saying that this HTML page is written using HTML5, the latest version of HTML. After that, our HTML page is structured as a series of nested HTML elements, where an HTML element describes something on the page, and we might have elements that are inside of other elements. Each of those elements is indicated by what we're going to call an HTML tag, enclosed using those angled brackets. And right here, we'll see the beginning of the HTML tag, which means that this is the beginning of the HTML content of our page. Down below, this /HTML means that this is the end of the HTML content of the page. And in between is the actual HTML content of the page, which might include other HTML elements. You might also notice that in this HTML tag, we've specified what we're going to call an HTML attribute, some additional information that we're giving about this tag. In particular, we're giving it a lang, or language attribute, which is equal to en, or English. This just tells the web browser, or anyone looking at the HTML of this page, that this page is written in a language, and the language it's written in is English. And this is helpful for search engines, for example. When they're looking through many different web pages, trying to figure out what language each web page is in, we can just tell the search engine or anyone else who's looking at the page that this page is written in English. Now, inside of the HTML body of the page, we have a number of different elements that are going to describe what we want on this page. Starting with the head section of the web page, which describes stuff not in the main body of the web page, the part of the web page the user sees, but other information about the web page that's going to be helpful or useful for web browsers to know about. For example, one important thing that the web browser needs to know is what is the title of the web page. And here we see a title tag, again indicated by the word title in those angled brackets, followed by the end of the title tag, indicated by a slash before the title. And in between the two title tags is the word hello, which means the title of this page should be the word hello. And that's all the information we'll have in the head of the page. We'll add more information there later, but for now, all the web page needs to know is that it has a title, and the title is the word hello. Next up comes the body of the page, again indicated by a body tag, and that ends with a tag with /body, meaning this is the end of the body of the page. And the body of the page, again, is just the visible part of the page that the user can see. And what do we want inside the body of the page? For now, we just want the text, hello world. And that's the information that's going to be displayed when someone visits this web page. And so that's all there really is to this HTML page. We specified in the header that there's a title of the page called hello, and inside the body, we're saying the page should say the words hello world. And if you want to visually think about the way that all these HTML elements are structured, it can sometimes be helpful to think about an HTML page in terms of a tree-like structure that we call the document object model, or DOM. And so here, for example, is what the DOM for this web page might actually look like. Here on the left is the HTML content that we just saw a moment ago. And over here on the right is the DOM, the document object model, the tree-like structure that describes how all of these HTML elements are related to each other. So we start up here with the HTML element. And this parent element, so to speak, has two child elements within it, a head element and a body element. As we can see here, where inside of HTML, we have a head section and a body section. And the indentation here that we're including in the HTML text, it's not strictly necessary. The web browser doesn't care what the indentation is. But it can be helpful for someone who's reading the page just to see the indentation, to understand visually that the head is inside of the HTML element and the body is inside of the HTML element too. So inside of the head element, we have a title element. And inside of the title element is just the text, the word hello. And likewise, inside of the body element, we also have some text, the text hello world. So thinking about HTML and HTML documents in terms of this structure can be helpful for understanding which HTML elements are inside of which other HTML elements. And that's going to make it easier for us to reason about these pages later on. And especially as we later transition into the world of JavaScript, JavaScript is going to make it all the more powerful and give us the ability to actually modify parts of this DOM as well. But we'll certainly get to that in due time.